Yo, what's good, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel. And in this video, we have our week 2 starts of the 2022 fantasy football season. But before we do that, we quickly have to recap our week 1 calls because we want to look back and see how we did. So in week 1, my quarterback starts were Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston finished as the quarterback 6 against the Atlanta Falcons, 21.66 points. And then where's Russell Wilson? He finished as the running back 14, 17.8 points. I thought he would do a lot better against his old team, the Seattle Seahawks. But not only did he not have a lot of fantasy points, but they did end up losing that game largely due to their running backs fumbling at the 1-yard line. I wouldn't worry about it too much moving forward. There will be good games for Russell Wilson ahead. And, they were moving the ball. They were moving the offense down the field. They just gave it to the running backs in the end zone and, they coughed it up. So tough break. My running back starts of the week. We are in half-point PPR here. I did suggest starting Alvin Kamara, and he had a week to forget against the Atlanta Falcons. I thought he would do just fine, and he did not. He had 6.1 points in half PPR. Definitely not what you want. And then my other running back start of the week was kind of a combo between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Aaron Jones, 9.1 points for the Green Bay Packers. And then his teammate A.J. Dillon finished as the running back 10 on the week with 17.6 points. So I was kind of right about that, kind of not. Both running backs are involved for the Green Bay Packers. I think there will be weeks where both will be good, but that week was not one of them. Looking at the wide receiver position for week 1, I suggested 3 players, one of them being Courtland Sutton. He didn't have the best week, 9.2 fantasy points. His teammate Jerry Jeudy had a long bomb touchdown, and receivers are inconsistent. And like I said, I think the Denver Broncos offense as a whole will be great moving forward. There might be Russell Wilson weeks. There might be weeks where it's more in the running game, but any piece of that offense I can get, I am more than happy to attain. And then, man, Elijah Moore, where is he at? Is he even on the list? I don't think he qualifies on the list. We got to go to load more to get it load more. We're literally trying to load more. Elijah Moore, wide receiver 51, only 7.4 points. Listen, man, I try not to give you obvious plays, like Devontae Adams and stuff like Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp. I try to dig a little deeper. Elijah Moore, he saw 7 targets, caught 5 of them for 49. Wide receivers have games like that. It happens. And then finally, I almost typed in Hollywood, but Marquise Brown was my other start of the week. He was a wide receiver 26, 12.3 points, 4 for 43 in a touchdown. So he actually kind of got bailed out by getting in the end zone right there. So that play was all right, but not great. And then at tight end, I suggested starting Dalton Schultz. I should probably move to the tight end position here before I search him up. Dalton. He finished as the tight end 10, 9.7 points. He was hyper-targeted, just as I expected. And even with the Dak Prescott injury, I think Dalton Schultz will still be solid for fantasy moving forward. Obviously, no Dak Prescott definitely limits his upside, but I think he'll still be solid. And then I said to start Pat Freiermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He had a nice little game. 5 receptions for 75 yards, 10 fantasy points. You will never complain about that, especially out of a guy you got kind of late in the draft. And like I said, guys, I'm not telling you to start Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, right? Because that is just too obvious. And then Cole Kmet is not going to come up on this list because I don't think he even had a catch. If you guys watched that Bears 49ers game that Cole Kmet was playing in for the Bears, the weather was horrible. It was literally like they were playing in a swimming pool under a waterfall. So I actually think this is a great buy low opportunity for Cole Kmet and Darnell Mooney, just because that game was crazy. I'm throwing it out, but it's kind of hard to make these videos because you don't always know what the weather is going to be like exactly until Sunday, which is why now I'm recording this on Saturday night. But the other downside of that is that if I was able to make this video, say, before Thursday, I was thinking, you know what, I would have put Mike Williams and Gerald Everett in there for my week 2 starts of the week, but I'm not going to be able to put them in because I'm recording it after that Thursday night game that the Chargers played. And turns out if I would have just made it earlier, I would have had 2 great starts for you guys. Mike Williams with no Keenan Allen. He went crazy, especially in the first half. And then Gerald Everett at tight end. He had a solid little game too. But no worries. We are going to get into some more great starts for week 2. My first quarterback start of the week is going to be Derek Carr of the Las Vegas Raiders. He had an okay game in week 1 for fantasy, but he had almost 300 yards, a couple touchdowns, just a few too many interceptions. That was against a Chargers defense that is a lot better than this next defense that he's going to be playing in week 2, the Arizona Cardinals. Long story short, their defense is in trouble. They just gave up 5 passing touchdowns to Patrick Mahomes without Tyreek Hill. So I'm not saying Derek Carr is going to come out and throw 5 touchdowns, but what I am saying is that I would start him with confidence as a quarterback 1, especially as a guy you got, in kind of those later rounds with the weapons he has with Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow. I think you can start him with confidence in week 2. Now we are going to move on to a guy that had a rough week 1, and that is Super Bowl champion Matthew Stafford, quarterback of the LA Rams. In week 1, he had a bad week. Let's face it, all right? But in fantasy, we can't let 1 week change our entire opinion about a player. And week 1 is probably the most impactful week when it comes to us forming our opinions about players. It's the first week. We're all excited. We want to see what is true for this, fantasy football season. Stafford came out and had a bad week. We don't want to play him. I'm telling you that in week 2, things should look a lot better for Stafford. The Buffalo Bills that they played in week 1, they have a much better defense than the Atlanta Falcons, a very good defense at that. And the Buffalo Bills are very heavy Super Bowl contenders, okay? The Atlanta Falcons, they are not that. Jameis Winston, one of my quarterback starts of the week from last week, we talked about it earlier in the video. He lit him up. He had a great week for fantasy. I think the Rams are going to come out and try to make a statement. They are going to show that they are not a fluke. They are coming back to contend for another Lombardi trophy. So I think Matthew Stafford, he's going to have a lot of fun in this game. He's going to be throwing the ball all over. And then finally, another guy that I think you can start this week is Kirk Cousins of my Minnesota Vikings, Skull Vikings. Kirk was one of my favorite late round quarterbacks in all of fantasy football in the draft season. In week 1, he had a nice week against the rival Green Bay Packers. Him and Justin Jefferson, that connection was crazy. Kevin O'Connell, the new head coach coming over from the Rams. As I predicted, his offensive-minded philosophy, it just led to them attacking that defense all game long. And even the players were saying that as well, that it was just a different mindset on the offense. And listen, Kirk Cousins, I'm not saying he's going to be great each and every week. We just, no quarterback is going to do that. And any given week, the Vikings could win it on the ground with Dalvin Cook, right? But I think in week 2 against the Philadelphia Eagles, I think Kirk Cousins is going to have to throw the ball. The Eagles can score. We're going to have to keep up. And Kirk Cousins has the weapons to do it. And now they have this head coach that is willing to let him throw the ball. In week 2, I think he's going to get the ball to Justin Jefferson plenty, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook. They're going to have a great game. So I would start Kirk Cousins with confidence in week 2. Now we're going to move on to the running back position, and I'm going back to Aaron Jones. He was a start of the week last week for me, along with A.J. Dillon. Aaron Jones had an okay week, but A.J. Dillon really led the way last week. And obviously, I'm not going to tell you to start guys like Jonathan Taylor, stuff like that, Christian McCaffrey, because those are obvious. But I think Aaron Jones is at a level where most people are probably starting him, but there's probably some people out there that might be nervous after week 1 because they saw A.J. Dillon go out there and get a lot of points for fantasy. And don't get me wrong, this is a bit of a committee. A.J. Dillon will be involved in fantasy, but Aaron Jones was still on the field a ton. In week 1, it just didn't result in a lot of fantasy points. But take a look at this, guys. Last year, okay, the 2021 fantasy football season in half PPR, week since against the Chicago Bears, who he is playing in week 2, he had 19 points in half PPR, okay? In week 14, he had 20 points in half PPR. Listen, I think that the Packers are going to be able to get things done against the Bears. They got absolutely embarrassed. No pun intended with the bear. They got embarrassed by the Minnesota Vikings. And they're going to come out against the Chicago Bears and do what they always do. They're going to dominate them. Aaron Rodgers owns the Bears, as he says, not the Vikings, the Bears. And I think this is a great spot where Aaron Jones could have a bounce-back game. I think you pretty much have to start him in fantasy, and he definitely has a lot of upside, okay? I think the Packers are going to come out looking for a big game. He had success against them in the last 2021 season, and while A.J. Dillon will be involved, and who knows, maybe he'll have a good game too, I'm focusing on Aaron Jones. I'm telling you that I'm still confident in his abilities and his involvement, so I would start him in pretty much any situation for week 2. For example, I have Jonathan Taylor, Javonte Williams, Aaron Jones, and Ezekiel Elliott in one of my leagues. I am starting Jonathan Taylor, obviously, Javonte Williams, and I am starting Aaron Jones over Ezekiel Elliott, especially now that the Cowboys don't have Dak Prescott. That offense might suffer a little bit. And in this matchup against the Bears, I think Aaron Jones could find some success in the air and on the ground. So I would start him. Next up, we have another running back who he's a very polarizing player in the fantasy community. He's been hyped up as can possibly be. He's been disappointing. Even though he's actually been good for fantasy, a lot of people were disappointed because they had such high expectations for this player. And in the offseason, it was pretty much all bad news. Brian Robinson was coming in to take touches. J.D. McKissick was going to be involved. Antonio Gibson was in the doghouse because of his fumbles. Well, as we know, unfortunately, Brian Robinson did get shot, and he is missing some time, okay? Antonio Gibson, he saw a lot of work with that absence. And even though Antonio Gibson has had fumbling problems, he's still a talented player, okay? He's in the doghouse because of his fumbling, not because he's, not able to produce statistics for fantasy, okay? So in week 1, he came out against Jacksonville, had 14 attempts, 58 yards, and this is the key part here, especially if you're in a PPR league, okay, or half PPR. 8 targets, 7 receptions, 72 yards. He had 16.5 points without scoring a touchdown, okay? Week 2 against Detroit, he might have a great game without a touchdown, or he might have a winning week if he's able to find the end zone. And I like his odds of getting in the end zone, okay? Detroit last week against the Philadelphia Eagles, the Eagles scored all over them. And the funny thing is, Detroit was actually able to put some points up on the board. So I don't think that the Commanders are going to be able to pull away from Detroit. I think Detroit has enough firepower to keep them in this game. And I think it should be a pretty close competitive game with not a ton of defense being played. Okay, so Gibson with his role, his talent, and in the matchup, I like him a lot this week. I'm just bringing him up because a lot of people might be completely off of him because of the offseason stuff, but I would play him with a decent level of confidence. And if you're not confident in him, you probably didn't draft him, but maybe you want to play him in a daily fantasy lineup or something, okay? So Antonio Gibson is a great start for week 2. My final running back start is going to be Jeff Wilson of the San Francisco 49ers. I'm not going to be starting him over really solidified options in fantasy. Fantasy Pros, it looks like it has him ranked as the running back 28 in fantasy. So, that's a consensus ranking of experts. I would say this is a guy where if you're weak at the position, if you went with a 0 running back strategy, or maybe if you're dealing with, some injury issues on your team, then Jeff Wilson is someone you can put in your lineup and probably expect volume, okay? Now, this is a bit of a potentially risky play because with Shanahan and the 49ers, we never really know 100% for sure what's going to happen, okay? We're thinking that Jeff Wilson is going to get the start here because the starter to begin the season, Elijah Mitchell, left week 1 with an injury. He's going to miss some time. We're thinking Jeff Wilson will see the majority of the volume and should see some red zone work if they're able to get there. But you never know. Tyrion Davis-Price, the rookie in San Francisco, who knows? Maybe they throw him in there and he's involved, okay? But if you're kind of desperate at running back, I think Jeff Wilson is a guy that's worth taking a shot on. And they are playing the Seattle Seahawks, who don't really, I think that the 49ers will likely be leading this game. They'll be able to run the ball after losing to the Bears in that weird week 1. I think the 49ers are a better team than what they showed. They're going to come out against the Seahawks and be able to run the ball a little bit. So someone is probably going to be productive for the 49ers. I'm guessing it's Jeff Wilson. Good luck starting him. Hopefully it works out. Now I have 2 wide receiver starts of the week to go over here. The first one is Marquise Hollywood-Brown of the Cardinals. I liked him in week 1. He got saved by a touchdown. Week 2, I'm going to suggest you go back to him against the Raiders. I don't think they really have the personnel to stop Hollywood-Brown. And I think the Raiders are going to score a decent amount of points against this bad Cardinals defense. So I think the Cardinals will have to keep up in this game. Obviously, they had to keep up against the Chiefs. And Hollywood did have a decent game for fantasy. He was saved by a touchdown, like I said, but I think they're going to try to make a concerted effort to get him the ball a little bit more. He wasn't targeted probably as much as you would want out of your brand new wide receiver acquisition. And hopefully the team gets their head on straight and they use their new weapon in the passing game in week 2 against the Raiders. My second and final wide receiver start of the week is going to be Julio Jones, wide receiver of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And like I said, guys, I'm not going to be telling you to start Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson. I'm trying to give you guys some maybe under the radar players. And it's weird to say that Julio is under the radar because you might have thought he's washed, but he's not, okay? He looked good in week 1 against the Cowboys. It turned into 3 catches, 69 yards, nice. 2 rushing attempts, 17 yards, targeted 5 times, and he ended up putting up 10 points for fantasy, okay? Now, in week 2, the wide receiver for the Buccaneers, Chris Godwin, is going to miss this game, and Mike Evans, his history with the Saints is hit or miss. A lot of the times it's a bit of a miss, okay? While the Buccaneers as a whole kind of make me nervous in this game, I think there's enough volume and enough necessity to use Julio Jones where he will be involved and see some targets, okay? If you look at the consensus ranking, they have him at wide receiver 32. I think that's fair. This isn't a guy that I'm forcing into my lineup no matter what, but as a wide receiver 3, I like him, and I believe he has a ton of upside, okay? Because it's Julio Jones. He could hit a big play with Tom Brady, the GOAT. It could happen, all right? So if you're looking for someone to put in that flex or your wide receiver 3 or whatever, I think Julio Jones might be someone that you can throw in your lineup. He offers a little bit of stability with the Godwin injury, and just with his God-given ability, he might take one to the house. Now we're going to move on to the tight end position, where, as I said, if I would have recorded this before the Thursday game, I would have said to start Gerald Everett, who came out and had 10.1 points in half PPR after having 12.9 points in week 1. It would have been a great start call. Unfortunately, I recorded it too late. I will use this moment to say, though, if Gerald Everett is on your waiver wire, I would suggest picking him up if you don't have like Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews. And then, of course, I would have said Mike Williams, and he had 21.3 points, of course. And then whenever I do suggest starting Mike Williams, I feel like he has like 1 point. But anyways, moving on, we're going to go to my one tight end start of the week. It's Dalton Schultz. If you haven't noticed, I have a thing for Dalton. Okay, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's that smile, if it's the way his hair is pushed back like that. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. All I know is this. People are panicking. Dak Prescott is injured. Cooper Rush is going to be the quarterback. And honestly, I don't care that much. I do care, for the offense as a whole. They're going to not be as good on offense. I think this affects CeeDee Lamb a little bit more than Dalton Schultz, though. I think Dalton Schultz is going to be kind of a security blanket. That's kind of just what he is. He's always there in the middle of the field just to catch these little dump offs, right? Last week, 9 targets, 7 for 62. It wasn't crazy great, but he got you some good points at fantasy. I think that's what he's going to be in week 2 against the Bengals, okay? The Bengals, I think they kind of struggle against the tight end position. Last week, Pat Freiermuth had a nice game against them. Last season, they had some struggles against the tight end. So I'm just kind of bringing up Dalton Schultz's name because I'm not saying, he's Kelce. But I think a lot of people might look at him and say, oh, I have to sit him. I'm going to start like Jonnu Smith over him. I'm saying pump the brakes on that. He's still a decent option at your tight end position. And he's definitely, I'd probably play him as, the mid tight end 1. Okay. So I like Dalton Schultz in week 2. And that's going to do it for the video. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys later. Good luck in week 2. Peace out.